Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
All right, everybody, peace. Welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casuan, and we have got a very special episode today, guys. Obviously we're going to be covering a lot of content around the NBA, and we're going to be covering some recent signings that occurred over the past couple of days. But also, we're going to spend a lot of this episode talking about some more introspective topics. So, in our third segment, we're going to be discussing the importance of betting on yourself and having confidence in yourself when it comes to your basketball career. And we're also going to be dissecting and discussing the importance of establishing culture in your program as a head coach. And obviously, since it's Friday, we're going to end the show with Storytime Fridays in our final segment, so be sure to stick around for that. Got a very interesting story to share with you guys from my times in playing both professionally and collegiately, or currently playing professionally. But if you haven't already, guys, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And be sure to subscribe to us and follow us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. So fix that. And if you haven't already, or you can do so, you can follow us on Patreon by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar and typing in GSMC Sports Network. There you can follow us. And if you'd like to support our company and our network, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. None of this is possible without you guys, so we're so grateful for all the support and the love that you show us by just tuning into our shows every day and sharing your thoughts as well with us. We know that you trust us with our analysis and our insight and our perspective when it comes to not just the world of basketball, but all the sports that we cover on this network. And we are grateful to share our perspective with you, but also to listen to your perspective as well. And with that being said, guys, why don't we go ahead and get right into it? Let's get into the topic of discussion for this segment. So, recent signings around the NBA. For those who haven't heard already, the Lakers gave Jarred Vanderbilt a 4-year, $48 million extension. So this will lock him up in LA for the next 4 years. As you guys know, the Lakers made a midseason trade for Jarred Vanderbilt during the middle of last season, which proved very fruitful for them. Jarred Vanderbilt was played phenomenally and played amazingly over the course of the regular season and during the playoffs as well. He showed himself to be a formidable defender on the perimeter and sometimes even in the low post when necessary. And he showed the ability to knock down the open three ball. So he was your prototypical 3-and-D guy, for the Lakers, and he was a key piece for the Lakers in their success along their playoff run. And the good thing with Jarred Vanderbilt, at least on the offensive end, the ball doesn't stick with him. And so whenever you're in a system that is ran by LeBron James or that has LeBron James in it, you have to have the ability to be able to shoot off the catch. you have to have that ability to create spacing, because even at the stage of his career that LeBron is in right now, he still likes to get downhill. He still likes to attack the basket. And by creating more floor spacing, by having more shooters on the perimeter, it opens up those driving lanes, and it makes it easier for LeBron to attack the basket. And it allows him to do what he does best, which is really play make and facilitate. And having Jared Vanderbilt there open up that spacing. But obviously what Jared Vanderbilt is most what he was most effective in while playing for the Lakers this past season was his defensive abilities. He showed the ability to guard 1 through 5 in some instances. Most times when he would be on the court, he would defend the opposing team's best perimeter player, which, as we know, takes a lot of pressure off of LeBron James, off of a Rui Hachimura. There are other wing players that get a large majority of playing time. And so by taking that pressure off of those guys, off of their other perimeter players, it allows those perimeter players to now exude more energy on the offensive end. And so now you're getting more proficient activity from those perimeter players, because now Jared Vanderbilt is your sole defender, your primary defender on the opposing team's best player. And that's why it's so important to understand your role and understand what you do best in a program or in a system. Because for all intents and purposes, we know Jared Vanderbilt, when he was in Minnesota, he was a solid shooter. He could shoot the ball well. He was in a system where he could put the ball on the floor more. But when he gets traded to LA, he's not asked to do that. He's asked to do something else. And because Jared Vanderbilt showed the ability to play within his role, not only did he get more playing time, but also he earned more money with this extension. And so that's why it's so important for guys to be able to understand their role and also buy into your role. Because when you're a part of a team, it's no longer just about your sole success. It's about the success for the team, and what are you willing to sacrifice. And we see time and time again that teams and programs, when they have players that aren't willing to buy into their system and buy into what their role is, it fails, not just for the player, but for the entire program. It fails for the entire system. And so that's why it's so important to buy into your role and to do your role best. And Jared Vanderbilt is a prime example of what can happen when you buy into your role. It can prove successful, not just for the team, but also for you as well. So that having that sense of humility. Obviously, you're a great player because you got to that level, but show you're an even greater player by showing that you can specialize in one thing. Because every great player throughout NBA history showed the ability to specialize in one specific skill. And that's what they did best. And so when you play within your role, you're showing that ability to specialize in one specific skill. And when you're nuanced like that, it makes it easier for you to be plugged and played into different systems. So great pickup, great signing for Lakers by giving Vanderbilt that extension. And the other recent signing that we want to cover is the Washington Wizards re-signing veteran forward Taj Gibson to a 1-year, $3.2 million contract. Gibson averaged 3 points, 2 rebounds in 10 minutes in 49 games for the Wizards last season. Taj Gibson, he's played 14 seasons with 5 teams, most known for his time with the Bulls and for the Knicks. Taj Gibson is going to be a important piece in that Washington Wizards locker room from a leadership perspective. This is a young Washington team, and they're rebuilding based off the trades. Them trading away Kristaps Porzingis and Bradley Beal, but also re-signing Kyle Kuzma to that max extension. They're obviously in rebuild mode right now, and having Taj Gibson there takes pressure off of Wes Unseld Jr. to have to, for all intents and purposes, kind of like regulate the entire culture, the entire system, and it allows Taj Gibson a role to, like I said, be a veteran leader and to show the young guys on that roster what it takes to be a professional, a consummate professional in the NBA. And it's so important to have veteran guys in that locker room, especially when you're in a locker room when you're a young team, which is something Houston struggled with last year, which is why they went and signed the likes of a Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. They signed guys that would provide a positive veteran presence in that locker room, and signing Taj Gibson for the Washington Wizards does that. As someone who's been a consummate professional and who has done things the right way despite his talent level, whatever you think about it, he has been a consummate professional. And having someone in the locker room like that, a positive role model, positive influence for the younger guys to look up to, it not only lays the groundwork and foundation for the younger guys as they move forward in their career, but also for your organization. It bodes well for you moving forward, because if your young core are the young guys that you're trying to build around, can have a strong foundation, solid foundation, when they start to get into their prime, it's much more solid and rooted in the positive traits and influences that were given to them as rookies, as younger players. And that's what Taj Gibson's going to do by signing in Washington for another year. So these are both big signings, great, perfect signings for each organization yesterday. But with that being said, guys, in our next segment, we are actually going to talk about the importance of establishing culture, not just in a high school program, but also in a collegiate program, and also in the NBA as well, because everything, no matter what level of basketball you're playing at, it's all about establishing culture. So be sure to stick around, guys. We're going to be talking about that in our next segment. All right, everybody, welcome back. So in case you missed our first segment, we broke down some of the recent signings that occurred in the NBA over the past 2 days. And be sure to stick around for the last segment of the day. As you know, it's Friday, so it is Storytime Fridays. For our last segment, we'll be sharing a story from my time either playing collegiately or during my current time playing professionally. And in this next segment, or in the segment after this, we're also going to be discussing the importance of betting on yourself, and the importance of having confidence in yourself in your career, and really that can apply to any aspect of your life. But if you haven't already, guys, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily that you can't get anywhere else. And in order to do that, you can go to patreon.com, click on the search bar, type in gsmcsportsnetwork.com, and that way you'll have access to all of our exclusive content. And if you'd like to support and support our network and our company, follow the link and the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. We're just so grateful for all support and love that you show us, and we're thankful for all that you do and all that you provide for us as fans, because none of this is possible with you guys, and it's an honor to be able to share our knowledge, our insight of the sporting world. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast, the GSMC College Football Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great content, and they're some of the best in the business. And it's an honor to work alongside them. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into our topic for this segment right here. And that's the importance of establishing culture. Oftentimes I have people come up to me and speak with me and ask me questions about, Casuan, what's the most important thing you've discovered about basketball when it comes to playing? Not anything off the court, but more so just when it comes to playing and being a part of an organization or a program. And I always tell them the same answer. No matter what level of basketball you're playing, no matter what coach you have, no matter what players you have, the most important aspect when it comes to playing basketball is establishing culture within your program. And I say that because culture in any capacity, in any aspect, is a representation of who you are as an individual. So your culture is what's going to define you and what's going to represent you as a program and as an organization for the entirety of that coach's and front office's time in that position. And when we establish what a culture is, that's what people think about when they hear you. And culture then this also applies to not just basketball, also like in the real world as well. So let's go back to basketball. When you think about the Bad Boys Pistons, right? What was their culture? Defensive intensity, physicality, accountability, tenacity, toughness. Those were their core foundational pieces. When you think of a team like the Golden State Warriors, what was their culture? Togetherness, relying on each other, unselfishness, also defensive tenacity. Another great defensive team. But the concept of unselfishness and serving and relying on others, and sacrificing oneself for the betterment of the conglomerate, of the organization. Those are key foundational pieces for establishing culture, and that's something that resonates with the individual. So when people see the Golden State Warriors, that's what we think about, because Steve Curry did an excellent job of establishing that as a culture within the program. And when it comes to establishing culture, you have to have those building blocks. The first building blocks that you lay for your culture have to be non-negotiables. So, whatever your culture is going to be rooted in, those are your non-negotiables. So you never can pull those roots out from under the ground. Those things are non-negotiables, and those are going to be there regardless of what players you bring in. Okay, and so those foundation blocks, those 4 or 5 key concepts that are non-negotiables, that's what your culture is really represented by. And then as you slowly start to add more layers on top of your culture, then the malleability can fluctuate depending on who's coaching. But whatever that core foundation, the core base of your culture, those have to be non-negotiables at all times. So whether it be constant respect, constant work ethic, all the guys in this program are going to work out 3 times a day, whatever. No disrespect is going to be tolerated, or no vulgarity in practice. Whatever your non-negotiables are, that's going to be the foundation of your culture. And once you establish culture, you have to be willing to lose any amount of players it takes to keep the culture where it's at. And when I say that, I mean that if you're a collegiate program and you find that your culture is causing you to miss out on certain recruits that you would want to sign, you can't acquiesce to the whims of the recruits and change your culture. You have to stay grounded in what you want to represent and what you want to be known by in your culture, and be willing to accept the fact that you're going to lose a lot of recruits. You're going to lose a lot of players because they're not willing to follow the standard of your culture. But anytime you lose players in recruiting due to what your culture represents, if it's positive and it's upstanding, you're only strengthening the culture, because you might lose that recruit or you might lose that player to the transfer portal, but now you're making space for players that are willing to buy into your culture and that are willing to rise to the standard that your culture calls for. So anytime you lose a player to recruiting or transfer, you're not really losing that player. You're just gaining another player that's willing to follow that standard. And you have to be willing to almost be resolute in your culture and what it represents. And what happens is, once other players see that and your coaching staff sees that you can be resolute in what you stand for and what you represent for your culture, they're willing to buy into it even more, because they know what you're representing is special. It has validity. It has a foundation. And so when people see that, they're much more likely to buy into what you're doing and what you represent. And that's not just in sports. That's in all aspects of life as well. But that's why it's important to be resolute in what you stand for and what you represent. And so what happens is, if I'm a player and I see my coach, if I see a coach that's willing to lose, 3 top 100 recruits because they're not willing to buy into his culture, I'm drawn to that, because I want to know, okay, what is his culture? What does he represent? Because it's an exclusive membership when it comes to your culture. Not everyone's going to be able to be a part of it. What teams yours flying under the radar? Yeah, great question. Shout out to Kenneth, by the way. Kenneth is one of our hosts on the GSMC Sports Network. He runs an amazing baseball podcast I was listening to today. But what team this year is flying under the radar? So if we're talking NBA, I will not be surprised if Detroit makes the playoffs with the young core they have with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. Those guys are really starting to come into their own and develop as legitimate NBA players. And then also they added one of the Thompson twins in the draft this year. So I would say Detroit for sure. But in terms of collegiately, I will have to say that UConn. I know UConn won a national championship, but they lost a lot of guys. But UConn is another team that I think will has a good shot of returning to the Final Four next year, and also University of Alabama. I know they lost Brandon Miller, but that's another team that I think has a good chance of making to the Final Four again. But speaking of Alabama, they've done a great job of establishing culture there, and we saw that with the Brandon Miller incident, they showed that, listen, what the gun incident that occurred with Brandon Miller, we're not willing to have him be a part of our program, so we're gonna sit him until that situation gets resolved. And so that's what I'm talking about. You have to be willing to sacrifice. We call it sacrifice. You have to be willing to remove people from your life or from your culture that don't fit it. And that's why it's important to establish culture. And once people see that you're resolute and that you can follow that standard, they're more willing to buy into it. And we see some of the best coaches, and not just collegiately, but in the NBA, have done an amazing job of establishing culture. So we look at collegiately, we have Roy Williams up here, we have Leonard Franklin, we have Bill Self, Tom Izzo, Coach K, John Calipari, even Patrick Ewing in a sense. He's doing a great job of establishing culture there. Jay Wright from Villanova, Gary Williams when he used to coach at Maryland. These are all great coaches that have done a tremendous job of establishing culture wherever they went to. And if we look at the NBA, we look at guys like Phil Jackson, Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, that whole Miami foundation right there, and Greg Popovich, and Red Auerbach when he was coaching Boston, or being the general manager of Boston, and Jerry West as a general manager. These are guys that have done an amazing job of establishing culture for whatever organization that they've been a part of. And that's why it's so important to establish culture, because it doesn't matter what talent you bring in, it doesn't matter how fancy your recruiting pitch is, it doesn't matter if you have the best state of the art facilities, it doesn't matter if you have the biggest budget in college, or you have the largest fan base in the NBA. None of that matters if you can't establish culture. And if you can't establish culture, you will never establish a foundation for winning, and you will never have success as a coach. And establishing something like culture takes time. It takes a lot of patience to establish culture. There's the old adage that it takes at least 5 years to establish culture at the collegiate level, because you need 1 year to remove all of the players that weren't from your old regime. People don't understand how hard it is as a coach to come into your first year and have a majority of your team be from the old regime or the old coaching staff or culture, especially if that culture had a correlation with losing and it was all they've known is losing. So you need a year to remove everyone that wasn't a part of, or that was a part of the old regime. Then you need a year to recruit, to get your guys, people that are willing to buy into your culture. Then you need a third year to build those guys, to build that culture. You need a full year just to focus on building and not recruiting, just building the culture. Then you need a fourth year to set the precedent of winning. See how we're really breaking it down? Really being intentional with each year. The first year, really intentional about just removing anyone that doesn't align with your culture and removing anyone from the old regime that's not willing to buy into the new culture. That's all the first year is about. Then the second year is solely focused on just recruiting, just getting guys that want to buy into your culture. That's it. That's all the second year is about. Third year, it's just building those guys to follow culture, getting those guys comfortable with being in your culture. That's all the third year is about. Then the fourth year, now you establish accountability. So you can't really establish true accountability for winning until that fourth year, because now you've established stuff. You got three years worth of recruiting done. You've got years of establishing what it takes to be in the program, in the culture. So now you got freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that understand what it takes. So now they can teach the freshmen. That's all the fourth year is about, just establishing accountability for winning. Then the fifth year, then you get to judge how good that coach is. So you need at least 5 years to establish culture, at least 5 to establish culture and to establish your program. But especially at the collegiate level, athletic directors, they can't wait. They don't want to wait that long. But it's not only hurting their program, it's hurting other programs as well, and all coaches, because they're not giving them time to really establish culture. I guarantee if you ask any coach that's played collegiately, even any coach that's played professionally, they're going to agree with what I said. Everything I'm saying right now comes from experience and comes from discussions I've had with coaches, not just at the collegiate level, but at the professional level as well. So there's validity to what I'm saying right now. And that's why I say culture is the most important aspect when it comes to winning at any level. High school, college, NBA, doesn't matter. Men's, women's, whatever. But that's why it's so important to establish culture. But that being said, guys, in our next segment, we're going to be discussing the importance of betting on yourself and having confidence in your skill set and in your career trajectory as a professional athlete. So, guys, be sure to stick around. You're not going to miss any of that. All right, welcome back. In case you missed our first two segments, we discussed the recent signings that took place in the NBA over the past 2 days, and we also discussed the importance of establishing culture and what that means for a program or an organization, and why culture is the most important foundation, the most important aspect, the most important variable when it comes to winning. And we broke that down in our second segment, and that's something that you're not going to miss. So be sure to, when the video is posted on YouTube, or when that segment is posted on YouTube, be sure to go back and check that out, because that is something that is extremely important to know, not just as an athlete, but also as a coach and a viewer, as a fan, so you know what you're looking at when it comes to watching these basketball games. But let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think is the most important variable when it comes to winning as an organization? And be sure to stick around, guys, for the final segment of our show today. We're going to be, it's Friday, so we're going to be talking about Storytime Friday. I'm going to be sharing a story with you guys from my playing time as a professional athlete, and either during my professional career or from my collegiate career. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well, so you can get exclusive access to all of our exclusive content as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. And if you would like to support our company and our network, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. We're just so grateful for all the support that you guys, the fans, show us, because none of this is possible without you guys, and it's just such a blessing to share this wonderful, share my thoughts and my insights on this wonderful game of basketball, because this game has done so much for me in my life, and it's gotten me to where I am today, and it's an honor, and I'm grateful to just talk about this with you guys. But with that being said, let's now dive into the topic for this segment, and that is the art of betting on yourself, the importance of betting on yourself, featuring Dennis Schroeder. And so I want to use Dennis as the backdrop for this topic, because he is the prime example of what can occur when you do bet on yourself, both the good and the bad, and it's the most realistic, the most honest depiction of that process of betting on yourself. So let's backtrack a little bit. If we recall back in during the 2021 off season, going into the 2021-2022 season, Dennis Schroeder was up for a potential max contract with the Lakers. I believe it was 4 years, $180 million or $80 million. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, guys, but it was somewhere around that number. And he turned it down because he wanted a bigger contract. And in doing so, he turned it down, and he went to Boston for a 1 year, $8 million contract. Once again, if I'm wrong in the exact numbers, one of you guys correct me on that. But we saw how that played out. He didn't perform well in Boston, ended up being released, and going into the he played basically the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, or the the FIBA World Cup qualifiers in the summer of 2022 for Germany. So during that time frame, he didn't have a contract, and he played well. Got recognition, gained the interest of NBA teams once again, and he ended up signing another 1 year deal with the Lakers. And it's important to share that caveat, that aspect of his story, because it shows that the truth, and it shows like an honest side of what can happen when you do better yourself. It doesn't always turn out well, but when I say that with an asterisk, with a caveat, because it might not seem like it's turning out well in that moment. But if you bet on yourself once, you have to continue to bet on yourself. So it's the old saying that you have to bet on yourself 10 times out of 10 times. Not 8 out of 10, not 7 out of 10, not 4 out of 10. No, you have to bet on yourself 10 times out of 10 in every situation, every scenario, you have to be willing to bet on yourself. And even though Dennis Schroeder betted on himself by not taking that max contract from the Lakers initially, sorry, he didn't things didn't turn out the way he expected to. But he continued to bet on himself by representing Germany in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, running the risk of injury. But he had so much confidence in his game, he knew that if he played well during the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, he would gain interest from another team. And that's what he did. And he was humble enough and willing to go back to the team that initially didn't want to give him max contract. And we saw how he performed this last season during the 2022-2023 season. He performed well. You could argue he was the best guard on the Lakers roster. I believe he was. And he played his way into finally getting a max deal from Toronto. And in my opinion, the Lakers should have kept Schroeder. They should have signed Schroeder to that max deal and been willing to part ways with D'Angelo Russell, because we saw how things turned out in the playoffs. Dennis Schroeder was a much better defender and a more consistent scorer as well than D'Angelo Russell. Though D'Angelo Russell was a better point guard in the sense, but Dennis Schroeder brings more to the table in terms of his defensive abilities and his rebounding prowess. And Dennis Schroeder is still a formidable offensive player, though he's more of a slasher as opposed to a primary floor general. He does show the ability to play make. So Dennis was able to bet on himself, and it parlayed into a lucrative contract for him in Toronto. So now he'll be in a quote unquote international market. He'll be the best player on that team, and he'll be under a max contract, which is what he's wanted all along, and he'll be, for all intents and purposes, the face of that franchise. And this is what happens when you bet on yourself. This is the prime example of what happens when you bet on yourself 10 times out of 10, no matter what the prior circumstances had you in. And it's so oftentimes people might bet on themselves once and they don't get the results that they wanted. So then they stop betting on themselves. But we have to continue to bet on ourselves no matter the circumstances, no matter what the outcome is, because eventually things happen in our favor if we're doing things the right way. So we have to continue to bet on ourselves. We have to continue to buy in and trust the process, and not necessarily apply pressure to the results and the end goal, but apply pressure to, like I said, the process. Apply pressure to the minutia, the details, the things that we can control, our approach to it, our response to adversity. We can control our emotional state. We can control our discipline, our commitment levels. Those are things we can control. We can never truly control the outcome of anything in life, but our approach to things and our attitude towards things and our commitment level and our discipline are things we can control. And applying pressure to those things allows us to help get to where we need to get to, and it allows us to be more confident in betting on ourselves. And that's why it's so important to bet on ourselves in all aspects, and not just in basketball but in life as well. And I want to use Dennis Schroeder as a backdrop to kind of represent this entire concept. But with that being said, guys, in our final segment, we are going to be discussing Storytime Fridays, because it's Fridays. It's Friday. It's the last segment of the week. I'm going to be sharing a story with you guys from either my time currently playing professionally, or my time as a college basketball player. So stick around. It's going to be a great story. You're not going to miss it. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed the previous segments from our show, we discussed some recent signings that occurred in the NBA, and we also discussed the importance of establishing culture and what that means for a program and for an organization, and why that's the most important variable when it comes to winning in any program or any organization. And then we also discussed the importance of betting on yourself and having confidence in yourself when it comes to chasing your goals and your dreams, and applying that same confidence to your professional career, whether it be in sports or in everyday life. It doesn't matter. Maintaining that confidence level and being willing to bet on yourself 10 times out of 10 in every scenario, regardless of the situation. And when we use Dennis Schroeder's career and his recent, really the last 2 years of his career as a backdrop to talk about that. And if you haven't already, guys, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And be sure to follow us and subscribe to us on Patreon as well, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily that you can't get anywhere else. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, typing in GSMC Sports Network, and you can follow us from there. And if you would like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're just so grateful for all the support and love that you guys show us, and it's such an honor to be able to talk about this wonderful game of basketball with you guys every day. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast, the GSMC College Football Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great content, insight on the sports that they cover, and these are some of the best media personalities in the business. So it's an honor to be working alongside them. And with that being said, guys, okay, Storytime Fridays. Okay, so I know I got a lot of responses about the story I gave last week on Storytime Fridays about one of my stories from my time playing in Mexico professionally. So I decided I would tell a story from my collegiate career this time. And this actually dates back to 2015, my freshman year on campus, my freshman year at Southern Virginia University. And I'm gonna tell the story, and I'm just gonna dive into. I'm just gonna share the story. So I remember my first day. Sorry, it was technically my second day. My first day on campus. You have to go through orientation and things like that, but I skipped orientation and packed my stuff in my room, and I went to the gym. And when I went in the gym, I met the starting point guard at the time for Southern Virginia University. His name was Emmett Mosley, one of my great friends to this day. And he was a junior, and like I said, I was a freshman. So as a freshman, I wanted to show people that I worked hard. I wanted to show people that I'm going to be a key piece for this program, and I was willing to do whatever it takes. And when I was in high school, I was known for being the hardest worker. And so whatever environment I was in, I was always made sure that I was the hardest worker, and I always made sure that no one was going to get more hours in the gym than me. I made sure that I was going to outwork everybody. And so, like I said, my first day on campus, I walked to the gym at like 8:30 at night, and I see Emmett drenched in sweat, getting shots up, boom, 2-dribble crossover interior shot, just drenched in sweat, working hard, like it's almost as he had been in the gym for 2 hours, just working, just going hard, 100% full speed, and every rep, shots up, everything. And so I go up to him and I say, "You're Emmett Mosley," and he stopped and he said, "Yeah, that's me." And I said to myself, I said to him, "Yeah, listen, man, I watched you play, man. You weren't here when I came on my visit, but listen, man, it's an honor to be playing with you this year, man, and I'm looking forward to having a great season." And in his eyes, he just saw this freshman. I was like, why is he talking to me? So he said to me, yeah, sure. He's like, okay, sure, okay. And so I said to myself, you're in here every night? And he said, no, I'm normally here in the mornings. And I said to myself, I told him, oh, okay, cool. I love working out in the mornings. I'm used to it. Because in high school, I would work out every day from 5:30 to 7 before going to school. And so I told him, hey, okay, cool. I'll be here at 5:30 tomorrow, 5:30 in the morning, so we can work out. And he said, no, you're not. I'll never forget that he told me, no, you're not. You're not going to be here at 5:30 in the morning. And I said, okay, watch, bet. I'll be here. And so I left the gym and I got ready, went to sleep, woke up at 4:30 to get to the gym 30 minutes before 5:30. And I'm walking in the gym at 5 o'clock telling Emmett I'll be there at 5:30. I walk in there at 5. Emmett's already on the court working out and drenched in sweat. And I told him, I was like, oh, I thought we said 5:30. And he said, yeah, I just wanted to get a workout in before you and I worked out. And that is when I realized the commitment level and that sort of tenacity and approach to getting better was vastly different from high school and college. And I'll never forget that. And I said to myself, okay, this is who I have to outwork, because no one is outworking Emmett on the team. So I have to make sure I outwork Emmett. And so from that moment on, I would get to the gym at 5 in the morning to work out with Emmett. And I would make sure I was there 5:30 in the morning every single day, getting shots of working out. Because in my mindset, if he's there, then I'm there. I can't skip any workouts because he's where I want to be in terms of being the starting point guard for this program, for this organization, and having a successful career collegiately. I need to do whatever he's doing. I need to get where he's at. And I took it as a challenge to say to myself, okay, I'm going to be here every day in the morning. And not only that, but I need to outwork him in the weight room. I need to be intentional about when I go get treatment in the training room. But wherever he's at, I'm there. I'm there with. We're not skipping anything. He's there. I'm there. And so I took it personally, and I was so blessed and grateful to have someone, like Emmett, that was willing to take me under his wing and mentor me that first year and show me what it takes to actually work hard and to be a starting point guard at the collegiate level. And I will just never forget that feeling of when seeing that he was already working out, getting a workout in before our workout. And I thought to myself, that's what it takes. That's how you get to the next level. And that's the mindset I've had since then. I realized that, I thought I was doing a lot of work, but it wasn't even close to what I needed to be doing. And that was a big factor that I took out of that experience. But the biggest thing I took out of that space and time that Emmett was my teammate was that he was willing to mentor me. He was willing to work with me. He was willing to show me what it takes. And I always said to myself that that same energy and that same appreciation and mentorship and teaching that Emmett gave me, I was always going to be willing to give that to the next recruiting class, whether it be the next freshmen that were coming in or transfers that were coming in, whatever. I was always going to be willing to tell them, hey, you guys can work out with me in the morning. You guys come and work out with me because I'm here. You don't ever feel like you can't work out with me. Always just know that you're always going to be able to work out with me. Just always know you're always going to be able to get in the gym with me whenever, wherever. It doesn't matter. And being willing to teach the younger guys. So I'll never forget that experience right there, that first workout in the morning. And he said he wanted to get a workout in before our workout. And mind you, this was during training camp, during preseason, so we weren't even having practices yet. This is just when everyone first got on campus, and that was my wake up to actually working hard at the collegiate level. And then at the professional level, it's completely different as well. But that's another story for another day. But guys, that is it for Storytime Fridays, and that is it for our show today. Wow, it's been a wonderful week. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button as well. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, click on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network /tip. And be sure, guys, to check out the other great shows we have on our network: the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC College Football Podcast, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. Guys, we'll be back again same time on Monday at 5:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions. Have a great weekend, and until next time, guys, peace.